So we are on the data validation project, and after reading the description, you should have some questions in your mind. Some of the questions would probably revolve around making a method, right, called alpha all alpha, making another method called isNumString, and also you must have at least 6 class methods defined. And yeah, so I'm going to talk about that. And so generally speaking, the data validation project is just you taking an input from the user and checking that input to see that it follows all of these rules. And if it does follow all of these rules, then you're going to print out you have allowed into the system. And if it doesn't follow all of these rules, then it's going to say some error message like you are not allowed in the system. Try again. And then it starts the process over again. So then we will go ahead and create a data validation file, right? And of course, we're going to name our public class data val. And we have our public static void main here. And so the first thing that we need to do is we need to take in input from the user, right? And if you are still kind of wondering how that's done, if we're looking here at the textbook, they go over it right here in chapter 7, right? So this is chapter 7 in the textbook. And then after you receive input from the user, you need to run an analysis on the input, right? So you need to check for all of these different cases, right? That the password is at least 8 characters, contains at least 2 numbers, has at least 1 lowercase letter, 1 uppercase letter, right? So you need to check all those things. And of course, checking are a set of or series of if statements, right? And so, yeah, so you got to run an analysis. It's going to be like if, and then finally, if it passes all of the tests, it's going to be like, okay, you're allowed into the system. And if it doesn't pass one of the tests, then it's going to say not good enough, try again, right? And so if it does say into the system, you could say allow in to the system, or if it doesn't, then you need to restart the process. Right. So how are we going to make it? It's pretty straightforward on how to allow it in. It's going to be like if, and it passes all of those tests, then it's going to system print line allow in, right? Or successful password has been created. If it fails any of those if statements, then you need to restart the process, which means we need a while loop, right? So all of this code needs to go inside of a while loop, and it has to kind of be like while true, maybe you could say, right? So then all of this stuff is taking place inside of the while loop. And this is a while loop that's going on forever because I have true in here. And then if you allow them in, then you can break, right? Or use the break command to stop this while loop and get them out to here, right? So that's one way you could do it. Another way is to set a variable, create a variable here, and then say while that variable is equal to some value, and if you're allowing them in, then you will change the value of that variable so that this statement is not true, and it will get out of the while loop, right? Or else it will just keep on asking them to take an input from the user, like enter password. Okay, so that's that setup, right? And then now the next question that's on your mind is, how do I make a method? Right. Well, we're going to learn about classes and objects and methods are just a fancy name for a function that belongs to an object. We're not going to get into that right now, but I'm going to show you how to create a function, okay, or what you know as a function, or you should know as a function. And the way you're going to do that, you're going to come out here, right, still inside of the class data val, and you're going to say public static void, and you're going to put the name of the function. So if we look through all of these, we have here all alpha, we have here isNumString, and these are this one here is going to return true if there's a character, if every character is a letter, right? And so when could we use this? Well, we are going to use this when what are we going to use it for? For the names, right? Because the names are not to include any numbers. And so this needs to return true in order for this to be true, in order for this to be valid. And then here is num string is going to return true. If every character in the string is a number, well, where are we going to use that? We're going to use that right here for the zip code because they must all be numbers. Right? And so we need to make this method. We need to make this method. What's another method that we need to make? Well, maybe we can make one that says, maybe we could say valid at, okay, to make sure that the at sign is included in the email and that it comes before the period. Okay, so let's do that. So we come right here and we say valid at. And then we put two brackets. And this valid at needs to take in the email, right? And the email is a string, so we're going to say string email. Actually, let me just stop right there. Let's say we have this method called valid at, and it has one thing that it does. It does system.out.println, and I say hello world. And then I want to run it, right? Well, where am I going to run it? When we first run this program, public static void main is run first. So if we want this to ever run, we need to run val at inside of the static void main. So how do we do that? You just type in the name of the function, val at, and then if I go ahead and compile that here, and then I run main, I say, okay, I got hello world, right? And so what is happening here? We run main. We have one line of code that's inside of main, which is val at. That means it's going to jump down to the user-defined function that we just made with the same name, val at. It's going to go inside the brackets. It's going to do whatever code we have here. Here we have print out hello world, which it's going to do. When it gets to the end here, it's going to jump right back to where val at was called, and it's going to continue down. Here's the end of main, which means the end of the program. Right. So that's how the control flow goes here in this small little program. But our val at needs to take in a input, right? So it needs to take in an email. And an email is going to be a string, right? So we got string email. It's going to equal some input from the user, right? But I'm not going to get into that. Let's just assume we have this string email that's equal to, like, I don't know, like Dan123. At gmail.com. Of course, this is supposed to be an input from the user. And we give it to val at, right? So what happens here? Well, it's going to create the email, set it equal to that value. It's going to jump to val at, and it's going to give it the value that's inside of this variable email, right? So when I'm over here, I need to receive it. So I say string email. And this could be a different name from the original variable that contains the email address. But I just, makes more sense to call it email. So I got that, and I'm going to right here print out email. Okay, so let's go ahead and compile that and run the main. Say OK, and it prints out Dan123. Okay, great. But our method needs to return a value. It needs to return true or false, because that's the way that we got these set up here, right? And that increases reusability, right? Because all alpha, we are going to be using it for the first and last names, but it's built in such a way that we're also going to be using it in different places, right? And so same thing with isnum string. You're going to be using it not only in one place, but I think 2 or 3 places. And that's because of how generic we made it. We made it perform a very simple task, and it returns true or false. So that's something that can be used in multiple places. Here, let's follow the same structure, where this is going to check if it's a valid email address following a certain set of rules. It's going to take in the email. It's going to run an analysis, and then it's going to return either true or false, right? So we're going to say if something is the case, if a branch state, if condition is true, then we're going to return true. Else we're going to return false, right? And that means right here, this needs to be the same data type as what's being returned. Okay, so we can't have it be void anymore. Void means it doesn't return anything. Just like up here we have static void main. Main runs, main doesn't return anything, right? That's why we have the void. So here we want it to return a Boolean. So we're going to type in Boolean. I'm going to get rid of one of these returns, and we can go ahead and compile and run. And it's not printing anything out because there's nothing to print out. So right here, maybe I can do a system.out.println and print out the return value of the function or the method. In Java, everything's a method of val_at. And so I'll go ahead and compile that, run that, say OK, and you can see it returns true, right? Of course, here we're missing all of the logic. And if this is true and that's true and that's true, then return true, else return false, right? We're missing all of that logic, but you now know the syntax for how to create a method, how to take in a argument, right? How to define a parameter, and also how to define the type of the return value, right? And to make it return a value. So that's how I want you to make these methods, and I want there to be at least 6 class-defined methods. So we have 1, we have 2, and then here I guess we have 3, and then you need to think about 3 others that you can create to complete this this project.